And just to be clear, the principal objective of this scheme is to ensure that traditional farm buildings and other related structures that contribute to the character of the landscape and are of significant heritage value are conserved for agricultural use. So just bear that in mind. Landscape, heritage, and use all are important and all matter. And I'm just going to hand over to Clara now in terms of, let's say, the first stage in terms of actually registering if you've never registered before. Thanks, Clara.
Lovely. Thanks, Anna. So if you haven't applied through our grant system since it was introduced in 2024, you will have to register through our website. So you can do this by visiting the link that's at the top of the screen just there, or you can find it on our website at heritagecouncil.ie. Go to the funding tab and click on online grant system. Then just quickly to say, it is really important to remember that if you are registering on behalf of someone else, you must register in their name, and the address provided on the registration should correspond with what the Department of Agriculture have on record.
Sorry, Clara, could you just hold there? Somebody's just put in saying no sound is coming through. Is that, can other people hear us? Could somebody put in a note in the chat? Sound is fine. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. It's okay. Thanks, Clara. Continue.
Okay, so once you get to the website to register, you will see this screen pop up as registration options. When this pops up, you want to select the traditional farm building scheme, which is the second option on the screen. So then moving on to the next screen, you'll see when you're registering, you'll just have to complete the contact information, filling in details such as your name, your role, your email, your phone, and your address. Then at the bottom of the screen, just tick I'm not a robot and hit submit. Again, if you are registering on behalf of someone else, please ensure that the email you provide is one that is actively monitored and is accessible, as this is where all the communications about this grant will be forwarded to. Finally, this is the screen that you'll see once you've completed your registration. You should then receive an email with a link to set up a password. So if you don't receive this email, please contact us at grants@heritagecouncil.ie and we will issue you a temporary password that you can use to log in and then create your own password. So I just want to finish then with some tips about using the grant system when making your applications. Please start early. The system will automatically shut down at 5 p.m. on Monday, the 18th of May. We cannot receive any applications or supporting documentation after this date, so just please make sure that everything is submitted as early as possible. Only log into your account using one device at a time. So what I mean by that is if you're logged in on your laptop, don't log in as well on your smartphone or on your tablet, as any information or documentation that you upload will be lost. And that goes again if more than one person is logged in at the same time, that information will be lost as well. So please just keep it as one person on one device. Any files that you upload then to support your application must be in JPEG, PDF, or PNG format, and each file must be no larger than 10 megabytes. So if you do experience any issues with the system or application, please just contact us at grants@heritagecouncil.ie. Most of the time the issues are very easily fixable, so just get in touch and we'll help you out with that. Okay, I'm just going to hand you back to Anna, who's going to bring you through the application process. So I'm going to stop sharing this.
Lovely. Thanks, Clara. We're going to open up, let's say, the actual application and go through it. We've done this for the last couple of years, and we think this is generally kind of maybe of most value to applicants. The other thing as well is if you do go on to the traditional farm building section on the website, there's a very good resources section as well as featured projects from previous years. definitely recommend you looking at those two aspects, which I think would be pretty helpful. Also, any questions, just please put them in the Q&A in the chat there, and we'll go through them all at the end. We're going to try and keep this as short and specific as possible so that we can give as much time to as many questions as there is. So, okay, so this is what you'll see when you open in terms of when you've registered. So if we go to the first tab there, eligibility, and you scroll down. Thanks, Clara. So this scheme, it is only open to farmers participating in one or other of these schemes, that is acres or organics. And in this thing, it'll be just a tick. So you'll have the option just to tick yes or no, yes or no. And also, of course, please provide your herd number. And to be really clear, the herd number must match the name of the person in terms of the contact. Okay, must match the name with Department of Agriculture records. If we just move on to the next tab, project information. Okay, what's the name of your project? Maybe it's my great-grandmother's hen house or the 19th century barn. Just give us the name in terms of what you are applying for. And then if we keep scrolling down, Clara, then you just can tick there which of those is most, let's say, relevant to your project. Is it a traditional farm building? Is it another related structure? Just tick one or either of those in terms of what's most relevant. Just a couple of things. So one thing I really want to point out is every year we receive applications for unroofed structures. Restoration works are considered a low priority under this grant scheme. There's certainly a place for restoration, but this scheme's focus is on the conservation of existing fabric, so the repair and reuse of existing materials. So just please bear that in mind if you are applying for an unroofed structure. We have supported a few over the years, but just bear that in mind in terms of that is not largely the focus of this scheme. The other thing, of course, is while it's called the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, you do not have to apply for a building. We can support more than buildings, and we always have, and we particularly encouraged this last year, and we're encouraging it again, and we do intend to allocate a certain amount of the funding towards other related farm structures, so that's something like walled orchards, walls, gates, cobbled yards, masonry dungsteads. I think we've also had the occasional farm bridge. And just the other thing as well is some people are applying for both a building and let's say a gate. Just tick the both then. Okay, keep going there, Cara. Then the next one, please. Or it could scroll down there, sorry. Where's the building? Air code doesn't necessarily mean. Okay, the map. Please upload a location map. Just when you're uploading the map, can you please also remember to put an X of where that building is on the map? That would be quite helpful. Okay, scrolling down in terms of the local authority, again, that would be just a tick. You'll get options in terms of which county. When was it built? If you know, please let us know. The use is really important to let us know about. You might not know its original use, but how are you using it now? One of the reasons that the Department of Agriculture fund this scheme is because they still see these buildings, these other related structures serving as useful assets for the farm. It's not a doing it up scheme for the sake of doing it up. All of these things have endured and are very durable and deserve to be used for the farm. So if we keep scrolling down, okay, what essential repairs are required? You can see the emphasis that we put on repair. So we try and retain and repair the existing materials and the fabric where that is possible. Sometimes replacement is required, but the focus is on repair. So just please remember that when you're looking at your building or your gate or your yard in terms of what needs to be done. And we do that because we're interested in reusing materials both for heritage reasons but also environmental reasons. You're all farmers in agri-environment schemes, so it should be about reusing what you can. So if we keep scrolling down, Cara, okay, the photographs. We ask for particular photographs to be submitted. A couple of things in terms of the photographs. Photographs the size of thumbprints aren't helpful. Several good, clear photographs are often better than a string of photographs that might tell us nothing. Remember, we don't know your project and we will not be visiting it at the application stage. The photographs, they shine a light on the project. And just if you scroll down, Clara, again, just to a very particular photograph, we ask for a photograph of the building or other related structure in the landscape. Remember, that's one of the reasons why this scheme is funded. So just in turn, like it's a photograph of it in the landscape, so not just of the landscape of itself. I think the simplest way to put it is take a photograph of it from a distance. Now, and then the next is in terms of please let us know about any maintenance you've carried out. That would be really important. We know then that maybe that it's been looked after in some way. And then if we move on to the next tab, in terms of budget, our favourite section. So, in terms of the budget, a couple of things. The costs must be backed by reasonable estimates and in terms of a quotation or your own breakdown. What we really want to know is that you're not plucking figures from the air. You really have to have an idea how much this might actually cost. Also, if you are intending on doing any repairs of yourself, you can certainly do that and you provide estimates for your time and your materials. And the rate for own material, for own labour is, as of September 2025, is €16.74 an hour, and that remains unchanged. The other thing is, the minimum grant that we can offer is €4,000. So in terms of that grant, the overall cost would be around 5,500. And the maximum grant is €30,000. And we've always stated grants are up to 75%. So that up to is important. We do try, but just sometimes not all grants will be 75%. Could be some very significant costs on some projects, and so then it wouldn't be possible in something like that. The other thing is something like, let's say if you or your builder are intending on repointing a building and in terms of using traditional materials, but you don't have experience in terms of using lime mortar, you can certainly put in a cost for the training of that. Something like that would be eligible because we don't insist on heritage contractors. But we do ask that you and your builder will bring a conservation ethos to repairs. Now, the other thing to be aware of is that VAT is not eligible to be claimed on this scheme, and that's the case whether you are VAT registered or not. Now, I think the next tab, Clara, just in terms of heritage and public benefit, this is where it's not really about tick boxing, it's also responding to the particular questions. Now, I'm not going to go into these too much because we have, in terms of the guidance, if you've seen it on Appendix 1, there'll be a paragraph in terms of the heritage interest, the public benefit, the environmental sustainability. So these are just to help guide you. But you will know your farm better than anyone, your project better than anyone. So just tell us in terms of the value. The other thing that I really want to point out is there a public view of your building? We ask yes or no. If there's not, it doesn't mean that you're not eligible. We just need to know then, if there is no public view, what are you going to do in terms of demonstrating the public benefit of your project? It is public funding, so you must do that. And again, we have a good section in terms of the guidance on that, which I hope will be helpful. Now, I think we can go on to the next section in terms of permissions. Again, this is in terms of letting us know yes or no, whether it's a protected structure, in terms of in an SAC or recorded monument. Just that last one. Are you the owner of what you are applying for? We know, let's say in some instances, maybe you, the daughter, have taken over the farm and the herd number is now in your name, but that the actual building is still in the ownership of your parents. If that's the case, you must provide the consent and upload it there, please. I think now then, okay, the next section then there's declarations. So that's just in terms of, let's say, please read that carefully in terms of your applying that you will agree to certain things, in terms of the sharing of the information with the Department of Agriculture and other aspects. If you have any query on that, please let us know. And then if you scroll down just to the end there, Clara, then your name, and then you can submit. But the other thing to be aware of is you don't have to do all of that in one go. you can save the draft. So you might just decide, oh, I'm just uploading a couple of photographs at the moment. So just upload your photograph, save draft. Maybe then a couple of evenings later, you're going to fill in the rest of the questions. What I will say is that from talking to people, it can take any time, maybe between 1 and 4 hours, to make the application and to submit it. We do not expect, we know that people may engage the help of relatives or your farm planner to help you with your application. That's perfectly fine. But what we will say is that it should be easy and cheap to make an application. We don't expect you to incur any costs at this stage in terms of making it. The traditional farm building scheme is what you call a two-stage process. This really is all we're asking is that you answer the questions, submit the photographs that we ask for, the map, and a quotation. It is what you can think of is it's an expression of interest. Now, we can go through other things in terms of the guidance, but maybe we'll throw it out to questions and that might help in terms of, let's say, filling it out.
Okay, so just a couple of questions I see coming through, Anna. Um, in terms, oh, sorry, jumping around on me. I'm going through probate and the herd number is still in my deceased uncle's name. Can I still apply?
I think what we've had a couple of similar instances previously. What I would suggest is yes, submit your application, put in the herd number, put also in terms of a letter where that consent is in terms of the situation, and we can discuss it with the Department of Agriculture in terms of the eligibility.
Perfect. Another question we have here is someone has a small housing unit for cattle, could be about 40 years old. Is it still eligible for repair or updating?
What we would say is generally buildings pre-1960 built of traditional materials of the time. So that would generally be maybe stone or mud wall or different buildings. So I don't know in terms of your construction. So can you have a look at, you can always pop photograph to us in terms of as well, and we can let you know whether or not we consider it eligible. We can't let you know whether it would get a grant, but we can confirm whether or not it would be eligible under the scheme.
Just another one in terms of the herd number. Someone has said I co-own the property with my dad. Do I still need his consent as the herd number is in his name?
If the herd number is in your father's name, then it's your father's name on the application. And you can both then, in terms of, let's say, submit consent with both your names on there, uploading the consent under the owner.
Okay. And just another one on the herd name. Someone has said that their herd number is currently being changed from a single name to a joint name. What way do they go about that? Will they put the original herd number on the application?
You put the herd number on the application, you put your name on the application, and again, what will happen is if you're shortlisted, we confirm eligibility with the Department of Agriculture. So that might be at a time when they say, oh, this name, is now in the both names. So you can clarify to us when the herd number is in both names. Just drop us an email to the system so that we can update the online grant system.
Perfect. One question, does storage of farm equipment count as agricultural use?
Certainly is agricultural use.
Perfect. I have a couple of people here who are saying that they don't have a herd number or they're not part of the schemes and they're wondering how to go about getting repairs done, possibly not under this scheme.
Unfortunately, if you're not in acres or you're not participating in organics, you're not eligible under this scheme. We know there are a lot of people not in those schemes who are very interested in this. The only possible option might be, and unfortunately, I think you may have missed the deadlines for it. I don't know what counties you are in, but if you look under the Built Heritage Investment and the Historic Structures Fund, there's a particular stream known as the vernacular stream, and that might have been something you'd be eligible to apply for. So have a look on the website of your local authority, go into the conservation and heritage section and under the grants section, and you'll see it there.
I just have one here that says, can I do this on my phone and how do I get the form? So yes, you can do it on your phone. To get the form, I would suggest going to our website, the Heritage Council, go to the funding tab and go to online grant system, where you can register or you can log in, and then you will see the application form then. Let's just see any other questions. So one question here is, someone has a roof that collapsed after a recent storm. Does that mean it's unlikely to get approved?
If you have a roof that has collapsed due to a recent storm, works that could be normally insurable are not eligible under this grant scheme. So if it's not insured, you'll have to, let's say, make that very clear to us and provide evidence for it. Doesn't mean that it's not eligible. Like we have always supported, you know, all types of buildings on this scheme, but you'll just have to make the case for it in terms of what needs to be done. Like there was storm damage over the last couple of years, and we can see that. So in something like that, really just what we want to be sure about is that the repair of that is not cannot be funded elsewhere, such as insurance.
Another question here is, someone is saying the current use is restricted due to the state of repair. Should we indicate in that application what we hope the future use will be?
Certainly, yes, that would be a very good idea. We know that some buildings they might not be particularly safe to use at the moment, and that would be quite clear in some of the photographs.
Another one here. Someone has a 100-year-old stone-built sheds, mainly consisting of repairing iron or galvanized roofing. Does this qualify under the scheme?
Yes, lots of tin roofs on the scheme.
Okay.
Very durable
Uh,
material.
let's just see. Mm. Do we need a conservation specialist to review the building for the application?
Not at this stage. What I said there was this application, this grant scheme has always been a two-stage process. So at this stage, all we ask is that you submit this application, answer the questions, supply the photographs, the map, and a quotation. And it's only if you're shortlisted that then it starts incurring costs in terms of engaging a conservation specialist. But at the moment, you don't need it. So why not just apply and see?
I've one here that someone says they're based in the UK, but they have a farm in Donegal. Are they still able to apply?
It depends. You might be based in the UK, but also do you have a contract with the Department of Agriculture in terms of acres or organics?
Um, one here, someone has said they have a courtyard built approximately 1860. It has a mix of slate roofs and a roof that was originally thatched but is now galvanized,
Hmm.
partially due to damage before the 1970s. Would they be required to put the thatched roof back on?
We deal with what's existing. So if there's a galvanized roof on it, that's what what we would try to be looking at is any of that galvanized capable of retention and reuse? And if so, then we would be doing that. But it would be then replacing like for like in terms of galvanized.
I think this is a similar question to earlier. Someone they're currently using storage for agri use. Could that be considered for the grant? I think we had that question earlier, and it was, yes.
Everyone needs a store. I don't know of any farm that doesn't need a store.
Um, so one here is someone has an old shed and loft that has been out of use for 10 years due to being unsafe. Um, would they be able to apply?
Yes, you will be able to apply. What we'd like to know though is, um, are you certain you will use it? You know, if it's got to the stage that, you know, it's not safe to use, is it because it fell out of use? So it's just that you would clearly have a use for the building if you're going to do the works, because it's not a doing it up scheme for the sake of doing it up. So certainly you're eligible to apply, but just consider that aspect, please.
Okay. One question has asked, how do we prove when the structure was built?
Um, You don't, well, one of the things is historic maps are very useful in terms of the Ordnance Survey maps are all available online. You can have a look at that. That certainly, you don't have to prove it. And we ask like, do you know? And you can put in the date. And if you don't know, you don't know. We can often also tell as well, often by the construction in terms of the kind of, and let's say the style and the design, what kind of era it might be. So, you know.
One question here has asked, can you apply for this scheme and the vacant property refurbishment grant as well?
Yes, we had, I think, at least two projects who did that last year. It was incredibly ambitious in terms of um, carrying out repairs on a house in terms of under the vacant housing grant, and then also carrying out repairs on their farm buildings under the traditional farm building grant. It was incredible undertaking by both of those applicants, and I must say they did manage it. I don't know how. So it's eligible. There are two different funding streams.
One question said that their building cannot be seen from the road. What are the acceptable options to justify the expense?
If the building can't be seen from the road, then you have to think about what would you do in terms of public benefit. Would you be prepared to go on radio or do a newspaper article or write a blog or share on social media? There's lots of different things you can do in terms of demonstrating public benefit. And if you look at the guidance document just at the end, there'll be a paragraph on that in terms of public benefit. So it doesn't, if it's not seen from the public road, that's okay, but there has to be other ways in terms of demonstrating public benefit.
Okay. Just one of the last questions I see here. Does the grant cover rewiring that is necessary due to completing the works? For example, if replacing a roof, the sheds may require rewiring.
That's unlikely to be eligible, but you can certainly put it down as a cost, and we can confirm if necessary with DAFM. But generally, internal works are not grant eligible unless they're in terms of structural stability, necessary for structural stability.
Perfect. Just one of the last questions as well. Someone has asked how many or what percentage of applications have received the grant in recent years.
I don't have that figure to hand because what it'll depend is how many applications that we receive. Last year, we received 347 applications. The previous year, we received 178 applications. So if you'd applied the previous year, in a way, we were able to shortlist any project that scored 60 or over. Last year, we weren't able to do that because there was many more applications. But at the same time, we say it should be easy and cheap to make an application so people weren't at a loss in terms of financial or other things. So that's important as well.
Right. There's a couple of questions here about wells, asking does the grant cover wells, and could someone include both a building and a well in one application?
You can include a building or another related structure. A well, what would depend is the well existing? Is it of historic or heritage value? I think we've had one such well in the last couple of years. It's not something we have really received too many applications on, but certainly if it's existing and if it's of heritage interest, it would come under other related farm structures as being eligible.
Okay. And just one question, someone is asking, how long does it take for payment once the works are fully completed? So I suppose once the applications close in May, what does the timeline look like after that?
That we have said that you will have until the first week of December to complete your project and submit paperwork, and that we can extend that deadline if needs be for if there's, for instance, bats roosting or other exceptional circumstances. So if all has gone as agreed and your paperwork is in order, grants are paid by within this year. It's 2026 funding, so it has to be paid within this year. But one of the other things is that you'll have to be submitting receipts for the works you've done, so proof of payment. So that's the other thing to be aware of. But nobody, this year, the Heritage Council will be making all payments on behalf of the Department of Agriculture. Previous to this, Department of Agriculture were making all the payments. And I must say, have always paid very quickly, unless there was a question. If there was an issue with a farmer's plan or something else, then it might raise an issue. Very rare for something like that to happen. We have managed grant schemes for over 20 years and have a lot of experience in them. So, we're very interested in there's funding allocated. We need to get rid of that funding and pay. So
Lovely. Thanks, Anna. I think we've covered all of the questions that I can see, and I'm very sorry if I've missed any. Someone said, can you provide an email address if I need further information? Of course. Please email grants@heritagecouncil.ie. It will either be myself or my colleague Amanda. We will get back to you if you have any questions, queries, or we can indeed refer you on to Anna if there's any more technical questions that you need answered. So
I
think
can see a
that's,
couple of other questions
can
here we
you?
can have a look at. Okay. How does it work if the farm building has an asbestos roof? Is it eligible? I've definitely had some emails on this as well this week. Asbestos itself isn't yet of heritage interest, not considered to be of heritage value. Perhaps it's a 19th century stone-built building and the roof was, replaced at some point in time. Certainly you can put it in and it'd be eligible and, we can consider it. It does mean that it's not the original roof on the building. So its heritage interest might be impacted somewhat, but not necessarily. So certainly you'll be eligible to apply.
Okay. Just a few more coming in there. Would a 17th century brew house be eligible?
That's a first for me. If it's considered a brew house in terms of agriculture, then it could be eligible, but that's a first. That's a first.
Another question that has just come in. Can you include a lime kiln visible on a public road on my farm?
Lime kilns are not eligible under this scheme. You'll see in the guidance document in terms of definitely what's not eligible, and lime kilns are not eligible under for consideration under this scheme. Doesn't mean that they aren't of heritage value.
Okay. I'm just having a quick look to see if I can see any more questions that we might have missed.
I think I saw something there as well as somebody who's trying to seek quotes from contractors and hasn't got a response yet. Time frame is very challenging. Um, Certainly the time frame is very challenging. What we would say is you focus on what needs to be done, but also on what's manageable. The other thing as well is that contractors generally, and I think if you've tried anything in terms of your own house or other business, are under severe pressure. So it may be difficult in terms of seeking a quotation, and we do appreciate that it can be challenging.
One question here has asked, will an equine herd number do for the application?
If that is a herd number associated with an acres or organics plan, then it is eligible.
Um, just seeing if there's any more that we might have missed. Mhm. Don't think I've missed any at the top. If I haven't gotten to your question, please just submit it again,
Yeah.
just so it's at the top so we can see it. Eliza, I can't see your two questions. If you wouldn't mind just sending them in again, and we'll have a little look at them.
I saw somebody who said in terms of a concrete building or concrete block building from the 1970s, Claire, unfortunately, that is not yet, let's say, in terms of acquiring heritage value. At some point in the future, it might. So it wouldn't be eligible for consideration under this scheme. But thanks for the query.
Quick questions there. Do you need 3 quotes for work done?
No, no. Sometimes
Okay.
for your own interest, it might be in terms of value to you in terms of getting a comparison quote. We can also see how challenging that could be to do so, you know.
Yeah. Just on that as well, if there's only partial completion of works, is there a partial payment?
Um, Sometimes some projects you can see that they're probably being quite ambitious, and then you realize at some point, oh, they're not going to get all of that done. So we'll come to an agreement in terms of what is possible and what might need to be done. So if that can be agreed, certainly that would be possible, yes.
Someone has asked, they have an old cattle house from the 1800s. Would the grant cover renovation to turn it into a house?
No, that wouldn't be eligible under the terms of this scheme.
Okay. If someone is still in the process of applying for a herd number, can they still apply?
Um, I think you'll need the herd number unless you're very close. Do you think you'll have it before the 18th of May?
Okay.
It just
Um,
seems that because if you don't have a herd number, I'm not sure if you're in acres or organics, or maybe there's a change happening there. It's just, yeah.
okay. Um, the one person has asked that the guidelines say repair of a slate, thatch, or small scale corrugated iron roof, including its structure. What
Yes.
is considered a small scale?
Firstly, thank you for reading the guidance. And we agree, small scale can be relative. So whatever the size of the roof is, you can submit it.
Okay. Another question. Once approved, how long do I have to complete the project?
First week of December for completion of project and submission of paperwork, unless we can give, and we have this in the guidance that there's bats roosting or other special circumstances, we will be able to give a short extension to that.
Someone has said that they applied last year, but they weren't successful, so they're wondering about our scoring.
If you applied last year, what you can do is pop an email to us with your reference. You would have got a TF reference on it, and we can have a look at it. Some applications, it depends. So obviously, if your application received a score, it passed screening and it was assessed. So certainly we can look at that. If you applied last year and it didn't pass screening, then you're obviously missing certain information. And then we also, every year we get certain applications that are just not eligible. So if you pop us an email, but if you have your TFB reference number, at least then we could look at the application. That would be helpful.
Yeah. Um, One person has a question there. The herd number is in names of farm partners, but the structure is owned by the landowner, who is one of the partners. Do I need all partners to consent?
The herd number will be, so the herd number is in the name of all parts of however many partners. So that's in the name in terms of the contact name of the applicants, and then just submit in terms of the consent, whoever the particular owner is of that, even if they are just, let's say, one of the herd number owners. It's just to avoid any confusion. I think that would be best.
How long would a building need to remain in agricultural use after the grant has been paid?
At least 5 years
Okay.
from payment
Um,
of grant.
okay. How soon would we know if the first stage of the application is acceptable?
We're saying we stated June. We're going to try and do a really as quick a turnaround as possible as we can on this because the time frame is so challenging. So we have stated June in the guidance. So we intend to keep to that. And honestly, if we can do that sooner, we will.
Okay. Um, would a very high 19th century stone boundary wall, which divides farmland from estate gardens, which are open to the public, be eligible?
If it serves as the field boundary, it is eligible. Provided that the one wall that is not eligible, and we have it, is that if you are an acres participant and are applying for dry stone walls, that is not eligible. We have confirmed that with the Department of Agriculture. So if this is a field boundary wall, because certain walls are serving, two different purposes. One is to a field and another is then at the other side, it could be a garden or something like that. But if it serves as the field boundary, then it is eligible in terms for consideration.
Okay. Just another question again. An old stone house now used for agri storage. Is this considered for the grant? And we had said yes, that this is
Yes.
considered. Yeah. Um,
Creative reuse of existing buildings.
um, One question has said, my project has two buildings joined at a later time. One is worth keeping, the other is of no use. Am I allowed to leave one out and probably demolish?
Hmm. Interesting question. I can't say to you about whether it should be demolished or not, you know. What you can do is you can apply for the building that you do want to do work on this scheme. Don't apply for a building that you're not going to do any work on. So while it might be, joined together, if you're only doing work on one building, you just apply for that building.
Perfect. I think we had a similar question earlier on. Someone has an old stone barn that a tree fell on a few years ago. Insurance only covered a small amount, which was used to remove other sick trees. Their insurance said it wasn't properly covered as it was too old. They
Okay.
said they repair the wall using traditional materials and it needs the roof repaired. Is
Okay.
this eligible?
It sounds that it's eligible for consideration. It does. Just double check in terms of what we specifically state in the guidance, but from what you're saying, it sounds eligible for consideration.
Okay. Another question, does the Heritage Council have reference costs for repair works if
Um,
quotes cannot be obtained?
Reference costs, well, the own labour costs, or do you mean in terms of costs for different kind of repairs? It's just the cost can vary widely across buildings depending on the scale of the building, the condition of the building, the nature of the repairs, the materials, where it is, all of that kind of thing. In terms of the reference costs, in terms of DAFM's reference costs, they obviously have costs in terms of the labour and the use of any kind of older, kind of machinery.
Okay. Yeah, costs for different types of repairs. I think
That
that's
varies hugely. And I'm not trying to be evasive on it, but if you think of all the different buildings that come in under the scheme, every one of them is different. The condition is different on each. The scale, like some buildings will need a scaffold, some won't. And it also depends on the types of works that you're doing. So it differs quite widely. What you might like to do is, if you can, we've obviously supported at least over 1,000 kind of projects at this stage. And there's a lot of, there's farmers in every county who have had a project. If you are able to talk to somebody, even if you Google traditional farm building project and name the county, someone might come up. So it might be good to talk to a couple of owners who've carried out works on their buildings, or at least if you know someone who's carried out work on a building that's similar to the kind of one that you want to do in terms of repairs, it might be useful.
a question in which I think you answered earlier. What's the typical date of approval to commence works if you are successful? I think you had said June earlier.
We let people know in terms of June about letting, it doesn't mean that you can start works in June, but we'll give the outcome as soon as we can in terms of, and we intend in June, but hopefully sooner.
Okay. Question here, can the building be reused for farm diversification agri-tourism?
It can't. That is something that has been discussed over the last few years. And at the moment, no, that's not considered eligible under this scheme.
Okay. Um, we have a couple of questions that are just a bit specific. If your roof is red corrugate, are you permitted to place it with red rather than green?
Actually, it's actually what we have, I suppose, a mantra in that we generally don't do pre-painted sheeting of any type. So you'll see people who might do the edge priming and painting themselves. So if that's what you need to do, then you can. We don't get quite in terms of colouring. Some people say depending, red seems to be the colour in terms of what we call tillage counties and green in non-tillage counties. So you could leave that up to yourself in terms of making that choice.
Okay, great. One question here. I have an old stone animal shed that is close to the road and in public view. Could I apply for lime render and whitewash?
Um, we don't have. It would be wonderful to see more projects rendering their walls because there's so many evidence of these historic buildings. You can see kind of, let's say there's little bits of lime render left, and obviously over years it hasn't been reapplied and it's been left. It's kind of really like the raincoat up the building. So we don't get many projects applying to reapply lime render on the stonework. But certainly it is eligible under, exterior works, and lime washing as well.
Perfect. Question here. Someone has said they received the grant last year to repair a section of traditional wall, and they're wondering, can they reapply again this year to repair another section of the same wall?
Yes, Seamus, you can reapply for another section of wall. What would happen is if anyone has received the maximum grant of 30,000 between 2023 and 2025, you cannot reapply. But for instance, let's say if you received a grant of 20,000 to repair a slate roof on your granary 2 years ago and you're interested in reapplying for something else this year, we can consider the project if it's eligible, but the maximum grant available would be 10,000. So it's just 30,000 is the maximum overall. So just to bear that bit in mind. I hope that makes sense.
Perfect. Then just a question. Someone missed the beginning of the session due to a loss of sound. Will there be a link to the recording of the session afterwards? So I think we're uploading this to our website, our YouTube, and all going well, we should be able to send a link to anyone who registered for the event as well, to the website and YouTube.
Right.
I think we've covered all the questions. I don't see any more coming in.
If there's anybody, you can write to us, you can email us, or you can telephone us. So if you're not comfortable about typing in, a question in the chat, please just telephone us. We'd be quite happy to go through it all. Please read the guidance. Seriously, that will be helpful. And also the featured case studies and the resources section on the website. The other thing is, it's a two-stage process. This is the first step. You could see it as an expression of interest. It will cost a bit of time in terms of making the application, but otherwise it really shouldn't cost any other in terms of finances. So why not apply? It's photographs, it's a map, it's a quotation, it's answering some questions. We'd love to see what's out there.
Just a couple more now have come in. Someone again is asking they received a grant for the full amount of 2023. Can they reapply in 2026?
No, if you receive the full amount in 2023, you can't reapply in terms of 2026.
Okay. Does removing cement plaster from an old byre and repointing with lime mortar?
If your building has been cement rendered, and certainly we've seen buildings like that, what you just need to check is the cement render generally causing problems at the moment? If, can you see that it is like there's cracking or it's, that it's causing damage? Certainly, if it is, something like that would be eligible for consideration. And then maybe in terms of the option might be then in terms of repointing with lime, but also maybe doing a lime render. Not quite certain, it just depends, but it just depends first and foremost whether that needs to be done in the first instance.
One of our last questions then. I have a slate on one part of an old shed. Can I replace it with galvanized sheeting?
If you've slate on your building, slate is a really generally, and I'm thinking about natural slate, it's long lasting, it's durable. We've dealt with a lot of buildings that are still with their original roofs on them, 150 years, 180 years serving the purpose. So, because it's a grant, the grant would, cover a good, go towards a good bit in terms of the repair of slate roofs. So generally, we wouldn't be replacing, a slate roof with the galvanized sheeting. We wouldn't generally consider that, a good option to consider on the scheme. That's kind of a general thing. I'm not sure about the specific circumstances of your building.
Someone said, can we upload a video of the building? No, you will have to upload all files in PDF, JPEG, or PNG format. So that does not cover videos. Just having a look at some more questions. So a couple here, do you need a conservation specialist to review the building? Do I need a surveyor first? I think we covered that already.
Not at this stage. No, not at this stage.
Sorry now, I'll just have a quick look. I think we've covered a lot of the questions that are coming up. Someone has asked, actually, I don't think we've seen this before, this question before, how can I keep my climate impact down and birds nest in the walls? And how could I increase the habitat value of my building?
That would be great. How can you actually, I was talking about this during the week. I was giving two things. Um, there was two things happening this week. One was in the RDS, the Spring Foundation Festival, and a farmer from 2023 was talking about her project that she did in 2023. Amazing barn. But during that, we found there was barn owls found nesting with chicks. And I'm really delighted to say that they're still nesting, there's still chicks being had there. So this is now 3 years on, which is fantastic. So in terms of, let's say, your habitat value of your building, okay, in terms of, let's say, a couple of easy things. If your building is slated and you need to reslate, I'd consider adding a couple of bat access slates. They're very small. They won't let in water, but they could let in bats. If you've got, are you doing repairs of joinery in terms of windows or doors? What about doing louved windows in terms of where you've got these small gaps, 3 to 4 centimeters? Let small birds in, but not the corvids. Gap above a door, like quite simple. I have one and I'm in town here, and there's blue tits nesting. Just a very simple gap above the door. The other thing also as well is in terms of pointing of stonework. You don't have to point all the stonework. You could leave certain gappy areas. They don't have to be big, very small on the top, like let's say in terms of close to the wall tops and the apex and things like that. And also not too heavily cleaning of a bit. We like mosses and lichens, so no big heavy cleaning of things. That will all help in terms of, kind of bats and birds and other things. And maybe you'd consider not laying rodenticide as well, or being very judicious in its use. That could also be certainly helpful.
Right. I just see a question here. Someone has said that they've already applied and they want to add more photos to their application. So if you've already hit submit on your application and you want to make any edits, just email us at grant@heritagecouncil.ie with your application number, and I'll be able to go in and put your application back to a draft, so then you can make any amendments before the closing date. Trying to see if there's anything else that we haven't covered.
Yes, a builder can give a quote without a structural engineer report first. That's perfectly okay. And yes, if you are applying for a few different things, some people apply for the repair of the roof, repairing external joinery, repointing the stonework, and it might be that actually really only the roof needs to be done. If that's the case, we'll make that very clear to you, and that's where the grant will be going towards. But we'll be very clear to you on that in terms of what could be supported and what would be supported.
In terms of the works being carried out, someone has asked, does your contractor need a tax clearance cert? And if you were to, someone has asked that if they do the work themselves, but the farm is in their father's name, are they eligible to receive payment?
In terms of the contractor, in terms of tax compliance and things like that, well, we would hope that the contractor is tax compliant, but we don't ask for the tax clearance certificate of the contractor. What we will ask is if you are offered a grant and the grant is €10,000 or over, you will need to supply a tax clearance certificate because the grant would be paid to you. So that's where a tax clearance certificate would be eligible. I'm sorry, what was the other part of that question, Clara?
Someone has said the building and herd number is in their father's name. Can my labor hours be eligible, and could I attend training and that cost be eligible?
Yes, we've got a lot of family projects happening on the scheme.
Okay. Um, I think we've covered the majority of the questions that are being asked here. I'm just going through the Q&A box as well as the chat function, so just trying to cover everyone. I think we've covered this one, but if you've more than one building, should each building have a separate application?
Well, in terms of the photographs, it might be best to submit another application. There were certain applications last year that there was very many photographs submitted. And I have to be honest, it was a little bit confusing at times. So it's just in terms of maybe clarity, and you're applying for two or three different buildings, you might actually need to make two or three different applications. But again, what I would say in something like that, bear in mind not only what needs to be done, but also what's manageable. This is a very challenging time frame. So you have to bear that in mind. Don't be putting, I suppose, yourself under pressure in terms of trying to get so much done. If you think it's manageable, certainly apply for it, but to bear that in mind as well as what needs to be done.
Someone has asked that in relation to an old stone wall that was removed on the perimeter of the yard, can this wall be funded if reinstated?
Um, it's if you see what we said about kind of restoration of lost elements, so such as a building that's lost its roof, so that's the same principle. So if it's not there at the moment, then it's really coming under reinstatement restoration works, which are generally not eligible for consideration on this scheme. And you'd certainly, for something like that, you'd have to provide evidence of what was there. There'd have to be very good photographic evidence. We're a heritage body, so we're trying to support the repair of the heritage fabric, so the existing fabric, the materials in the building or the walls that are actually there and standing at the moment.
Okay. Um, okay, the question here, if you have two different projects, is the grant available for each project, i.e. 30 grand limit each project, or is it 30 grand allowance per person slash herd number?
It's a 30K limit per person slash herd number.
Okay, I think if there's any questions that we haven't asked, if you wouldn't mind just submitting them again, just so they're popping up to the top, that would be great. Question here, if you are selected and you start the work but is not completed on time, do you lose all agreed funding, or is it valued at the stage of the closure date?
With something like that, I'd hope you would be keeping in contact with us and let us know in terms of the difficulties you're having beforehand so that we can come to an agreement on what is manageable. Because we have to be able to certify that works have been, have satisfied the conditions. So something like that, it's just to keep in contact with us if you think that time frame you're not going to meet it, but that you are able to do certain work so that we can agree in terms of the works that are possible.
Um, Someone has said there they have an old dwelling house, galvanized roof needs replacing, and it's used as a farm store. Is this eligible?
Farm store is eligible, yes.
Okay. Someone has asked, do we have a list of contractors?
We don't have a list of contractors. Like we can refer, there's two different sources, maybe possibly is the Register of Heritage Contractors, It's something that's available, and also the Irish Georgian Society have a register in terms of contractors and others on their website. But as we said, we don't insist on you using a heritage contractor. If there's a builder that you've always used and are happy in terms of working with, you can certainly provide them him or her with a quote. But if they're not, skilled in terms of, let's say, conservation, repair, or heritage, provided that they be willing to do some training or at least open to the ethos of using lime mortars and repairing timber and things like that, there wouldn't be any difficulties.
Okay. Just tying back to that question earlier in regards to applications for two herd numbers, um, or is it one application? What am I trying to say? One grant per person. Someone has said that if a couple has two herd numbers, can they both apply to get two grants?
If a couple have two herd numbers, then I'm guessing there's two different plans in place. And one is in an acres plan and the other is in an acres plan or something like that. So I think then it would be eligible because there's two different herd numbers, so two different plans.
Perfect. Just the last couple of questions now. Someone has asked, what happens if the costs change after the structural engineer sees it?
If you're shortlisted and a conservation consultant notice that certain things have not been quoted properly, we will also pick up if we think the costs are not what should be. Do you know what I mean? We'll pick up on certain materials or labour. We will let you know and we'll give you the chance to put in revised costs.
Um, then just a question on the process. If the Are the works inspected before the grant is paid, or does photographic evidence need to be submitted before the grant is paid?
Um, there will need to be a final report submitted before the grant is paid, and we do carry out certain inspections. But if we are carrying out an inspection, we will let you know to, agree a date and a time.
Okay, right.
It's great to see the work.
Yeah,
It's lovely to see what's been done. So,
absolutely.
in the flesh.
Um, just having one last look. I realize we've gone over an hour now. I don't want to keep people for too long. The one I had there, a very old farm building, but half of the roof and loft is gone. But can I still get a grant for the rest of the building while it is still intact?
Um, so half of the roof is gone. And if you just want to repair half the roof that is there, then does that mean half of the roof is still missing? And we'd wonder how that building is usable. That, that doesn't sound eligible to me under, let's say, the guidance or the terms of the scheme. You can pop us an email in terms of with a photograph and in terms of explaining what you want to do, but it doesn't sound to me eligible under the terms if you're intending just to repair half of a roof of a building that's missing half of the roof and not intending on, let's say, repairing the roof in full.
Just a question again. Someone said they've missed most of the talk as the webinar been recorded being sent to us. Yes, it has been recorded. It's going to be uploaded to the Heritage Council website and our YouTube, and we will try and email out the link to these to everyone who signed up for registration. Anna, I think we've covered most of the questions. We got a lot of questions in, so thank you for everyone who sent in your
Thanks.
questions.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to have so many questions coming in, and thanks so much for attending. Um, Look, it's a really interesting scheme. We've been working on it for quite a long time. It's quite fascinating that the variety, the diversity of building and projects that come in. It's a two-stage process. This is the first step. As I say, it will take time to make the application, but it shouldn't cost any money. So why not just, submit for what you think and what needs to be done? And what you could also do is in terms of even if you Google traditional farm building, you'll see a lot of projects that people have done. People have, being in touch with, different kind of media bodies and articles, and they'll demonstrate. You can see in terms of the different works that can happen. And also do go on to the resources section in terms of on the traditional farm building page and also the featured studies. And that will also, I think, be helpful in terms of what you want to do. And do read the guidance. And do whatever you do. The 18th of May is the deadline. If you're starting your application at 4:30, that's not a good idea, you know. And we won't, and if your internet is going down at 4:30 or 4:45, sorry, just don't leave it to then. And again, of course, you can make a start now. Why don't you register after this now? And then make a start in terms of doing a little bit tomorrow. Then maybe leaving and saving a draft. Then going back another few days later and save the draft. You don't have to submit until it's all done. So you don't also have to do it all in the one go, which is kind of helpful if you don't want to be online all the time.
Lovely. Thanks, Anna. I'm just after popping in
Brilliant.
our
Thanks so much.
grant's
That's
email
great.
into the
Yeah.
chat again, so everyone has it. Any questions at all, please
Yeah.
contact us
Yeah.
and we will get back to you.
Yeah. And if you're, you know, as we said, sometime next week, if you want, telephone us, email us, or write to us if you have any kind of questions that, you know, popped into your head now, maybe after this or later on. That's it. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.